You are listening to Framing the Future podcast, presented by the Architectural Authority magazine.
The point of university for me and the point of this time in my life is to experiment with different techniques to grow, not just personally, but to try to grow the profession of architecture as well, to kind of suggest something that maybe, suggest something different. And in those classes, we were taught to think that way. We were taught to think, what can you offer to this world? What can you offer to architecture? What can you offer to this school? How can you grow yourself?
This episode is sponsored by the Stones and More Group, your go-to destination for premium surfaces and a leading wholesale distributor with over 2 decades providing top-quality porcelain, ceramic, slabs, mosaics, panels, and building materials, crafted to transform any space. To learn more, visit our website at mosaics.com and explore our full range of premium products.
Welcome to Framing the Future podcast. I'm your host, Ana Paula Leal, and today we're diving into the world of the young and talented designer Shend
Bejkollari,
a rising architect originally from Tirana, Albania, currently an undergraduate at Florida International University. Shend has already made an impact working alongside the Professor Fernando Herrera on FIU's Microhousing competition and co-founding Escape Studio, which is dedicated to creating immersive spaces that provoke thought and push the boundaries of conventional design. Beyond architecture, Shend has a passion for painting, photography, music, and politics, all of which fuel his creative vision. Let's get into his journey and inspirations. Thank you, Shend, for being here.
Thank you. Beautiful introduction. Maybe better than I deserve, but
No, of course, no. We had the opportunity to talk before, and you have an incredible story. And I would like to share with the public, like, where all that passion for architecture comes from. And we're talking about like 5 years ago when you were in Albania, in your
yes.
natal country.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the invitation first. It's a beautiful initiative, beautiful studio. Everything is great. So thank you for inviting me. And I think it's great that you're giving students a voice. And not a lot of people are doing it. In fact, I don't know anybody else who's doing it. So that's a great initiative. And yeah, originally I come from Albania, a small country in Europe. Well, it's not as good as Europe, but it is still in Europe. When people go there, they don't really understand that it's Europe. They think it's maybe, I don't know. But it's great. I loved growing up there. You grow up and you learn to be a little tough. I always had a passion for arts, like you mentioned, the painting and photography and drawing. My dad and my aunt have a background in painting and arts in general. And ever since I was young, I remember my earliest memories are, painting with my dad or drawing, and he would teach me how to draw. And sometimes it was a little bit boring because I kept doing things over and over and over again, like drawing a cube and a sphere. But that was really important to get to learn the shadows
the lights.
Right, and those are your beginnings. And my dad very patiently, taught me all that. And then later I joined. I won a competition to enter the school it's the best school, the art school in Albania. It's a high school. And I think I came 8th or 7th out of 100 and something people or 200 people.
Oh, nice.
And I entered the school, and that's where I really began focusing on painting and drawing, photography. I did a little bit of sculpture, not as much. My dad his profile was in sculpture, but I decided to go to painting because I always felt that I had him at home to show me sculpture, but I wanted to learn something that he maybe wasn't as proficient in. So I studied there painting and drawing, and it was really fun. Honestly, it was the best school I've ever been in. We would paint live people who would sit there for us for hours, and we would paint, and we would become friends with them, and later we would invite them to our home and would continue to paint them. Yeah, me and my friends, we would go to my friend's house, and he had like a little studio in the first floor, and we would invite them, the people who we would paint at school, so that we would catch up if we were, like a little behind at school. And everybody wondered how are you so ahead?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, well, we used to pay them like $5 or give
Oh
them
my
a
God,
coffee
wow.
or something, and keep them with conversation.
That's
as we
funny.
Yeah. But anyway, in Albania, I left Albania when I was I think 17.
Hmm.
It was during my senior year in that high school, and I came here to Miami because of we had some family in Miami that helped us or sponsored us to come here. And in the beginning, it was a little tough because had just I was in a school where art was everything to me.
Hmm.
I used to do it every day, and now I came here and I couldn't enter into an art school, so I had to go to a normal high school, and I kind of a little bit lost that touch with painting and with art, but then came architecture and I don't know if I should tell the story how
Yeah,
to.
sure. Because I really like the story of how you
Right.
became.
Yeah. It came to a point that I was finishing my senior year
Yeah.
in high school, and I had to make a choice. What do I want to do? And I wasn't sure that I wanted to continue painting or art. If you had asked me in Albania, what do you want to do? I wanted to be an artist. But here, I wasn't so sure because economically it's a little difficult. And
I know. I understand
yeah,
that.
right.
Yeah.
It's a tough field. You have to be really good at marketing, and you have to be really good at
That reminds me when I
selling.
also came here,
Yeah.
because I always also liked, like art, architecture in Cuba. I wanted to study architecture and ended up
Yeah.
going to civil engineering.
Mhm.
And when I came here, it was like so many opportunities, so many things that you can do.
Right.
And I started like a science. I was going to be a pharmacist.
Oh yeah, from arts to pharmacist.
From art to pharmacy.
That's a big leap.
Exactly. But then I was like, what are you doing, Ana Paula? Like this is not truly what you want to do. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and me too. I was facing the same dilemma. I didn't know what to do, as I think everybody faces at some point faces that challenge. And just randomly one day looking at Miami-Dade, because I had to go to Miami-Dade. It was the cheapest possible
Yeah.
option. We had been here for 1 year. Not only I couldn't afford to go to other options, but I didn't even know what other option. I was so
Exactly.
confusing
Yes.
to navigate, that part. It's confusing if you're here, if you're born here. Never mind coming here and all your world completely changed. And one day we were scrolling at the majors that I could pick, and my mom just randomly said, "Well, architecture." It was like one of the first ones because it starts with A. And she said, "Well, just pick architecture and then switch if you don't like it." And I was like, "Well, okay." I have no other option that I can think of right now, so I just chose it. But then after a couple semesters, I stuck with it, and it was a little bit boring in the beginning because of the classes are a little bit too conceptual, too general. Yeah. But then it started to really get interesting, and now it's part of my daily life, and I
you
love
even
it.
have co-founded
Right.
an architectural studio,
Yeah, me
which
and
is
my friend.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yes.
me and my friend, we've been doing a couple projects here in Miami, a couple residential houses in Miami Lakes, and a couple houses in the Keys. We've been part of other projects, turning a hotel into residential.
Nice.
Little projects like that, but they're really useful to get to learn how to speak
To the client.
to the client, to communicate your ideas to in the real world, because sometimes the school is too conceptual,
Too creative.
too creative, which
Yes.
I love, but you also have to know how to deal with it in the real
The
world.
codes, and yes.
Right.
That was also when I was at school, I had an internship in architectural
Right.
office, and it was so different, like at work is like so, like you have to really follow like the city codes and
Right.
everything. Kind of like the creativity at school is almost, like
You're free to
barely-
do,
yeah,
and you can disregard anything you want, but when it comes to building,
yeah.
you have to take really a lot of responsibility. And I love the fact that we can do this kind of projects, and also earn a little money too, so we can pay the school. But
Great.
yeah, it's good
Yes.
in that sense, but it's also good in the I would do it even for free. And that's something that I think I ask myself, would I do this for free? And if the answer is yes, then I'll do it. But if the
Yes.
answer is no, I won't take it.
You would
Even if they
think
pay me,
twice,
I
exactly.
wouldn't take it.
And at school, how's been, like your design process, the projects that you have liked the most, also the most controversial that you
Yeah.
have?
Okay. Well, first, FIU is a very good school. Has a lot of very good professors, with some exceptions, of course. Like any other school, there's some professors are not good, but the majority you mentioned there, Fernando Herrera
Yes.
is incredible professor. The way his way of teaching, and we talked about this, and I think you had him too, right?
Yes, I had a class with him. I think it was Design 7.
Mm-hmm.
It was during the pandemic, so everything
It
was
was online.
online. But it was one of the best classes I had. I really had fun with,
Modeling and
modeling and exploring different shapes,
Mhm.
and and also the doing the caricaturas,
Right, yeah, the characters, yeah.
the characters.
Yeah, he's that's part of him.
Yes.
He does that for his when he does his projects. He's great. He indoctrinated me into his way of thinking,
Mm.
and I kind of related to it. I don't think I would have if my dad wasn't a sculptor, but my dad is a sculptor, and I see some of his early works, my dad's early works, and it's very similar to Fernando's architecture.
Wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
his way of expressing himself with the shapes, and he did it what he thought, because Albania was a communist regime. He didn't have access to a lot of
Hmm.
foreign or outside work or contemporary work.
Contemporary work, yeah.
So he did what he
What he was used to see
right,
in the moment.
right.
Yeah.
But I see it now, 40 years later, and I look at Fernando's work, and it's very similar, and that's why I think I was attracted
Wow.
to his teaching, and I really enjoyed it. I've never looked at architecture the same
The same after
after
Fernando's.
Fernando. He
Yes.
introduced us to a lot of very good architects, Morphosis, and I
Yeah,
think people like that.
which you will have an opportunity
Yeah,
to
at Tom
at
Wiscombe.
Tom
Yeah,
Wisdom. Yes, that's
maybe.
amazing.
Fingers crossed. We'll see. I don't know, but I went there to the studio in
Yes.
LA, and I had an interview, and I was introduced to the people and to the office, and we left it open after I graduate.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure, but if I had to guess, chances are maybe yes. I would
Oh,
say yes.
that would be a great opportunity.
Yeah.
I also was very inspired by Tom Wiscombe designs, and not only Fernando. I had another professor who introduced it to us.
Yeah.
So I think it would be, like for me, it's one of my favorite, like
Yeah.
offices to work for. And you did a project, Microhousing. How was the collaboration with Fernando in that project?
No, it was great. Fernando is amazing. The way that he expresses his ideas very clearly. What he's very good at speaking, very good at selling his idea,
Mm.
and he can sell it to you even if he's selling something very bad. You wouldn't know. But his architecture is amazing. I helped him in a microhousing competition that he did. I wasn't really very involved in the design. I suggested a few things to him, but we worked together more into finishing the boards and finishing the proposal.
The proposal.
I helped him with the drawings, and I helped him with the graphic side of it. But I also suggested a few things. We worked together a little bit on the design, but it was mainly his competition. For me, it was important to just work with him and see how he does it. Look at the technical things in the model, how he connects geometries together and things like that.
In Grasshopper?
He did it in Rhino, but he used a little bit Grasshopper too.
Okay.
But for me, it was important to see that, just to get in the door and to see
That process of design.
Right. Yeah.
And how I have seen your designs, your portfolio, and it's amazing.
Thank
And I
you.
would like to know, what is your design process? What do you think about? How do you get to a concept? I really like, for example, like the one in comprehensive, where it has that strong division in the middle. So can you talk more about that?
Yeah. Well, the process, how I usually start, I'm very influenced by what's going on around us. As you mentioned, I like to be really involved in politics, and I like to be involved in everything that's going around us, and that, even if I don't want to, influences my way of thinking, because I absorbed a lot of that information, and I push that out and create architecture with it. I don't know if you've seen that clip of David Bowie where he talks about how to him music, I'm paraphrasing, but to him music was more of a tool. What he used to express his ideas. He could have picked, acting, or he could have picked painting or something else, but he picked music because that's what he was good at. But he used that to express what he thought. He saw music in his case as a tool. I see architecture in the same way. I don't see it as a profession, but I see it more as a way of expressing my ideas, because that happens to be something that I enjoy doing and I can be good at. So I see it that way, and the way that I tried to approach that building in that case was to start with a major concept or major idea that was important to me at the time. And in that particular project, which I tried to show with the drawings, with the caricatures of Trump and Biden, like kind of fighting and splitting the building in half.
Yes.
That was kind of a metaphor of the times that we were living. This project was done a couple months ago, but it's just as relevant now. That there is a very strong divisiveness in the country and in politics in general, and I know people that fight with each other because of this. Sisters don't talk to their brothers because of what happens in Washington, which is ridiculous, but it's true. It's a reality that we live right now, and that happens to me too with my friends. I can speak to some friends who are very, very support Trump a lot, or support Biden, or are Democrats or Republicans.
Yeah.
You can't speak to them because they are so
They cannot take
they cannot,
an opinion,
right.
or they cannot take the other side.
Right, and it's I think it's terrible, and I try to express that in the building by kind of splitting it in half, and and it's like a crack that is kind of
Yes.
splitting the building into two, and the only thing that comes and kind of
In the middle, like
in
it's
the
like
middle.
is the genesis of the
Right.
again of the
Yeah.
building.
And the only thing that kind of connects these two
Yes.
broken pieces is the staircase, which itself is a
Like
it's
a
a
masterpiece.
it's a beautiful element in itself, but it's the purpose of it is to break these two pieces. But what it does is negative, but what it is beautiful. So there is like a paradox between the purpose of it and the aesthetics of it. And to me, I looked at it in a way that architecture can have that positive influence in, even though, for example, the building is divided, what brings it together is this staircase, which in itself people walk on it and climb it. So they're doing something that unites them, and what it does itself is unite the building. So it has like this useful purpose, but it's also metaphoric as well.
To the situation.
Yeah, but I did that caricature just to create kind of to make people. I put it as a first page, right? So you see that, and
Yes.
then you see the design.
And this conversation, this like polemic, let's say,
Yeah,
you had
yeah.
it in the last when you were presenting this
Yeah.
in the final presentation day
Mhm.
to your professors.
Yeah, I was explaining it, and I wasn't taking a side. The project wasn't really taking a side, saying, "Well, Trump is bad and Biden is good," or the opposite. I don't support either one of them. I'm more in the middle. I don't. I think when I say, okay, who am I going to vote for? I look at both of them in the lenses of an independent. I don't look at them as a Republican or as a Democrat. And the project wasn't to take a side, but they misinterpreted that, and they thought I was taking a side. And well, they wouldn't let me speak. I tried to present, and I tried to give my opinion, and I made fun of both of them. I didn't even mention their names, but that's enough for them to understand who they were. I didn't even mention the name, and they wouldn't let me speak. And it came to a point where even the professor was like, "Guys, you have to let him speak, and then you can say what you believe." And in the end, they said something which I think was very, very silly or very stupid. What they said in the end, that you gotta read your audience and you gotta say what the audience thinks. And I looked at them and I said, "That's one of the most
Yes. Like
silly things that I've ever heard." Because what's the point of me working 3 months on a project for me in the end to say what you think?
To respond to no, you have your
Right.
opinion, you have your stand, you know what you want. So
Yeah.
I don't need to explain something or agree with the majority
Exactly.
of the people. So
Exactly. What's the point of me
Yeah.
being here if you just want to hear what you want to hear?
What you want to hear.
Exactly. Your point as a judge, which I think they misinterpreted, they looked at it more as saying what was wrong and what was right. But their point as a judge is to say, well, this is what you say, okay, and now I say what I think you should do or what I think you should say. You should never say to a student, that's one of the worst advices I've ever heard. Say to a student that you should say what the audience believes. You know, it's not a good
Yeah,
advice.
it's a very sad situation, and
Yeah.
it's sad that it's happening. Like.
But it's a reality in the school, and
Mm.
it's a reality in our lives. You know, you say what people want to hear, and um,
You cannot become one of the like the majority in that sense. And I think that you're doing good in the sense that you're speaking what you think, what is
right,
your think is right, and going against like what the professor, because you also had another
yeah, it was a similar situation
similar situation with
with another.
another
Yeah,
professor. So
which
yeah.
it's sad that in in a university in America,
Mm.
in the US, we have to be scared of what to say. You know, we
Mm.
should never be scared of saying anything. We are there in the university to express our ideas, and I tried to express my ideas with this other professor that you mentioned, and they wouldn't. Because he's very opinionated. I don't want to mention his name because
Yeah.
no point. Doesn't add anything to the story, but he's very opinionated, which is fine. As a person, you are opinionated, but as a professor, I think you should try to give the general view, because that's what the university is for, to get a general view, as little indoctrinated as possible. Which
Mm.
of course you have to be. You're gonna get a little bit indoctrinated in the end, but try to limit that to the minimum. But he doesn't do that. He says what he thinks, and when I try to not correct him but to offer the other view, he says no, there is no other view. This is the only view, right? And, it, and
Yeah.
it's terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. And like when I was at FIU, that I never had that. I don't know, because we are in election
Yeah,
days,
probably
election
that's the
times,
reason. Yeah.
but it never happened to me, that type of situation. So, well, besides those two,
Hmm.
like interesting
Yeah,
situations you
situation.
had, which has been the project that, as a designer, as a student,
Hmm.
you have grown more, that you have discovered things that you didn't know about yourself and about other people and about the world that surrounds you.
The projects, I would say, the projects in Fernando's class for me were the most that I've grown a lot, not just technically, but um, grown a lot in the way that I can start a project and have a big concept in mind and
Mm.
kind of justify everything that I'm doing based on this concept that I'm using to create the building. And I think that in those classes we weren't doing a building just to do a building and that's
Mm.
it, like we do in some other classes where you just told, okay, this is the lot, and you start, and the first thing you do is decide where to put the stairs.
Yeah.
And I don't think that way. I can't think that way. I have to. The point of university for me, and the point of this time in my life, is to experiment with different techniques to grow, not just personally, but to try to grow the profession of architecture as well. To
Mm.
kind of suggest something that maybe uh, suggest something different. And in those classes, we were taught to think that way. We were taught to think, what can you offer to this world? What can you offer to architecture? What can you offer to this school? How can you grow yourself? How can you grow the way that you think or the way that you do these projects? It wasn't just about building a building or
For just
design
building it,
for
for
just
designing
doing
it.
it.
Yeah.
You had the bigger goal in mind, and
Yeah,
the
I
goal was
think,
to
yeah,
question things.
one of the things that he does is that he makes you think. He makes you create like a very, very strong concept so you can
Hmm.
defend your project at the end.
Right.
Because things that happen, and I think it happened to everyone in the first semester, is that you have this beautiful building, but
Right.
in the day of the presentation, we're like blank. Okay, like how do I,
How do I
like
justify this that I'm
justify
doing?
this exactly? So I think like having a strong concepts in the beginning, and like someone like Fernando that helps you like tie that concept since the beginning, I think
Hmm.
is pretty important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you bring this experience at a school to Enscape Studio Design? And what's your role there?
Yeah, my role there is a designer first of all.
Mm.
I take responsibility in the design process. Of course, then you have to transmit that to the client. So of
Mm.
course, me and my friend, we have that responsibility as well. And of course, you have to know marketing. So you have to uh, sell your ideas. So we're doing a little bit of both. And of course, there's the other part of the codes. So you got to know how to deal with the zoning, and you
Yeah.
deal with that that aspect of it, which is not fun at all. And there were plenty of times where we got in a lot of fights with the zoning department over a couple feet difference, which is nothing. But so that part is not fun, but the rest is very fun.
Who's in charge of that part?
Well, we both kind of
Both of
do it,
the
and we have
yeah.
another person who is helping us a little bit. But
Yeah.
you have to know how to do it,
Yes,
because in the end, you're
exactly.
designing something that. And we had projects that we did. The bedroom, for example, was pushed 10 feet in the back. We pushed it 10 feet because we thought that the property line ended there, and we had the setback like I don't
Yeah.
remember 15 feet after the property line. So we followed that, and then in the end, when we submitted it, it was completely wrong. We had it was like 10-foot difference that we had to get back.
Okay.
So we had to redesign the entire thing
Yeah.
basically, because the bedrooms and the kitchen, they
Yes.
were kind of aligned with each other.
Mhm.
So there have been times where we in the beginning, but now we don't make those silly mistakes. But you have to grow, and you have to
Exactly.
make them so you don't
repeat it.
repeat it, which to me is fun. Now that I look back, it's fun, but at the time it's very stressful.
No, yeah, because you need to submit that. The client is like you have a
Oh my
deadline.
God. Yeah.
It's
No, they're not like this. They're like hitting the door. They're not knocking on the door. Yeah.
That's interesting. And what's the most project that you have like working on in Escape Studio? The one
Um,
that
the one that I liked the most was we did a house in the Keys,
Hmm.
which was very fun because you learn about how they design their where they take precautions of the flooding
Hmm.
that happens there, and you have to raise a house, and
Yes. For the
that was really fun to learn. And I think the house will get built. I think the next year is gonna
nice.
start. I think in January or in February the foundation is
Good.
gonna start. So that one was fun. Yeah.
And what is the philosophy of the company? What it brings new to what is different from the other
Right.
architectural
Well,
offices?
you want me to be honest with you?
course,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Don't put this part. Well, for now, it's we're just in the beginning. We're trying to grow. We're a little selfish now in the sense that we're trying to take as many projects as possible
Yes.
to learn as much as possible, which I think is normal. You never start with. I think the people who say that they want to change the world, and they don't do it. They
Yeah. You need to start like very little. And I understand,
right. Yeah.
like at the beginning is, like as many spray as you can.
Yeah.
achieve, so.
Yeah, we're starting small, but we're
Mm.
trying to do, and me personally, I'm trying to do competitions, and I'm trying to do as much as possible right now that I have also the time,
Yes.
and I'm fresh. And it's also something else that I don't want to learn too much of the real world, because then I think that I would lose this
The
creative.
sensitivity of
Yeah.
design.
Yeah, because I think when you are young and you don't know something, for example, you're trying to learn guitar. I don't know if you know how to play instruments, but when I try to learn guitar, for example, when you learn one or two chords in the beginning, you feel so free, because in the sense that you only know a couple chords,
Yes.
and you can create a song with those, and you're not thinking of the scales and the
Yeah.
different things, and you just know three chords and you know how to play it. And the Beatles, for example, they did it better than anybody else because they knew a couple chords. They weren't proficient. Nobody knew how to read music. Nobody knew how to. They couldn't speak in these terms, these musical terms of scale.
Yeah.
I don't even know them, but they just knew basic chords, and they were able to create beautiful melodies that anybody could follow.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
super interesting.
Well, don't get me started on the Beatles, because if I start on the Beatles,
What's your favorite song?
favorite song? Well, I have a tattoo of "Strawberry Fields Forever."
Oh, I love that song.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't say that's my favorite, but it's incredible song. For me, my favorite album is Revolver. It's a beautiful album, but I like all of them. I can't decide.
I remember you mentioned that you drew something, or you did a design based on a song
Right. Yeah. In Miami-Dade, I did
in Miami-Dade.
I tried to turn a song into a building. So I did for the song. It's called "A Day in the Life." It's on Sgt. Pepper's album, and I tried to take that song and take like the way that it was organized and the lyrics, and try to translate them into architecture and the way that the building was, the program, the way that you circulated in the building. I didn't like the final product because I was in design 4 or something. It didn't come up as nice, but it was a experimentative semester where I could try to, do something different and think of architecture, for example, related to music, rather than just think of, where to put the stairs or where to put the door or how big the window is. To me, that's not interesting at all. To me, this is more interesting.
creative,
And nobody else better to choose than the Beatles
Yes,
to
no,
do that.
I love the Beatles. I watched the movie Across the Universe.
Oh yeah, it's
the
beautiful.
musical movie. Oh
Yeah,
yes,
it's
I learned all
beautiful.
the Beatles songs. I learned was
From that movie?
from that
Really?
movie.
Nice.
Yes, and that was in Cuba. I didn't even know English when
Yeah, me too. I learned.
Yeah.
I remember being very young and I translated "Let It Be," and I tried to like pick up words from that, and that's how I learned like the first words in English. Yeah, that's true for most of people who outside of the
they comes to Miami, well, to United States for new life, new opportunities. And so looking back to where like you started, what would be like 3 advices you would give to yourself in this long process?
Well, number 1, don't do drugs, don't drink. No, I don't do drugs. I would say read a lot.
What's your favorite book?
My favorite book in architecture or just
Well, it
general?
could be general, like anything.
There's a book called A Man's Search for Meaning. It's a beautiful, beautiful book about a psychologist. I think he was a Jew during the Second World War, and he was captured in Auschwitz, and he talks about how he was able to survive that incredible journey, and he says that if I was able to survive that kind of those kind of moments, then anybody can survive. You can do anything. It's a beautiful book. Very motivational. It makes you looks at struggles in a different way, and whatever you're thinking that it's important to you right now, when you put it in the context of him and those people and those times struggling, you think this is nothing.
I do sometimes do that when I like feel stressed or like overwhelmed. I'm like, why do you really are overwhelmed? What are you really stressed about? And I compare myself to like kind of like, okay, what you're thinking right now,
it's so unimportant.
You just have to think in like other people's situations, even like part of my family who is in Cuba, like struggling. I'm like, what, like I have to keep going, like you cannot let yourself down. So that gives you a lot of strength. So.
That book is great. Another book, for example, it's called Here, There, and Everywhere. It's based on a Beatles song, because the Beatles have a beautiful song, Here, There, and Everywhere. And this book was by Jeff Emerick, who was the Beatles sound engineer, and he was basically there for most of the Beatles albums. I think he missed only 1 or 2. And he talks about how was it being in the background of the Beatles and watching the Beatles every day, and the stories are incredible. I'll just tell you one short one. For example, John Lennon, and he's a great inspiration for me. He's one of the, a genius.
Yeah.
But he was very experimentative. That's why I like the Beatles, because the Beatles were very experimentative. And John Lennon always questioned things. He was like, well, why can't I sing? Why can't we put a bathtub and I put my head in the bathtub and sing so I sound like I'm underwater? And they say, well, doesn't make any sense. And we put the microphone in the bathtub, he said. And they said, well, the microphone, electricity, well, you're going to die. And he said, well, why don't we put the microphone in a plastic container with water, and then I'll sing from outside, and so it looks like I'm underwater.
Wow.
And he always questioned things. He always, which created a nightmare for Jeff Emerick. He was a sound engineer. he didn't know what to do most of the time. But it created a lot of innovations, and that's why the Beatles are the best, because of they innovated a lot of things. They always questioned. There were four young guys they were like, rules are meant to be broken, and let's just break them and see what happens.
And I think that's a good thing that, like always question. That is something that we have, I think, stopped doing nowadays.
Yeah.
Like questioning things, and in this new era where there's a lot of opinion, there is a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
We believe what we consume in social media, and we don't question those things.
Yeah.
And that's the sad part.
Right. And I see with architecture too, when I'm looking on the internet of inspirations or things to do, and you look at them and they're beautiful graphically, they're beautiful, but after that 5 seconds of saying, wow, this is nice graphics, you question and you say, well, is this actually good, or is this just graphically good? And sometimes that is very difficult to make the distinction between those two, and that's very dangerous.
Yes, that's the AI, artificial intelligence. And what do you think about that?
Well, I like some parts of it. I heard recently a lecture by Tom Main of Morphosis, that he said, now he said, with AI, I can cut my studio from 500 people to 10 people, which is bad for those people because they get fired. But for him, it's good because he now can have bring back the company and make it smaller again. So he has now a one-to-one with, instead of needing 500 people, he only needs 10. And it's easier to communicate the ideas between 10 people rather than 500. And the designs come up better, and they can test, infinite amount of designs in 5 seconds, and then choose from that, and they design better and better and better.
That's scary too, for the future. So how do you see architecture from here to, like 10 years?
Well, I don't know. You're asking the wrong person. Well, I think most of it is just hype. It's just I don't think it has any essence to it. But there are some things that are a little scary when you think about it. A lot of professions will go away, but a lot of new ones will come. Just like it has always happened. The internet took a lot of jobs, but also created a lot of jobs. I don't think that people overreact sometimes and say, well, this is the end now, but it has never been the end, and I don't think it will ever be. Architects will still have a role. It will just change, so and it's just like evolve.
You have to keep on with all the technology and the new programs that facilitate in a way your life and your work.
Yeah, you have to use it. I think if you don't use it, you just like with every profession has to change now with AI. So we're not special in that sense, but it's true that some professions will go away, but other new ones will come.
So picking up on the question, like what 3 advices?
Yeah, sorry, we forgot. So we said don't do drugs. I would say so. The first one was read more. The second one I would say it's question things more, because like we talked about, I don't want to repeat again. And the third one is, I would say, communicate as much as possible. Have a dialogue or debate with a lot of people. I don't like to comfort people, to go against them. Only when I'm really secure about what I want to say, then I try to have a debate. But if I'm not really, if I don't know the topic very well, I try to listen more. But I think it's important. Debate is very important to have in not just the school, but in our daily lives. We should have debates. We shouldn't be scared of debates, because they're, in the end, we're testing out ideas, and we can be wrong, we can be right, but that's the point of the debate, exactly. to test out and try to prove to me why I'm wrong and why I'm right. And a lot of people don't want to do that.
Yes, they're afraid,
right?
Because they don't have, like they don't have a backup.
They don't have, but it's part of their character.
Exactly.
It's not something bad, situations. But it can be good and bad. It depends how it's used, like with everything. But to me, I would say, talk more and have debates more, even with with students or with professors and with coworkers, with everybody. Try to, even when you agree with what they say, like test them on it.
You remind me of a situation I had at work, and I was talking with a friend,
right.
And I had these other like friends there, and we were debating and about also about all these social political things that are going on. And I had a really, like conversation, and I was like, bueno, like, does someone else has a different idea? And I was like,
Right.
Like, come on, like, I guess,
Yeah,
you
we're
also
just having
have your,
a
you're just
right.
talking, like, sharing, comments and everything. But I think it's a way of growing, and don't
Yeah,
take things
exactly.
personal,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
because I think a lot of people cannot, or they get very, like, intense, or
Yeah, but it's
because you just have to relax, you're just, like,
right. We're just
is
talking. We're just
talking
and
exactly.
the same thing that in the in the juries that we do in the end of the
Yeah,
architecture semester, and the people always see it as something stressful, but to me, it's not stressful at all. To me, it's fun. You okay? This is what I believe. That's why I did it, and now I'm trying to prove to you why I did it. You may disagree, but that's fine. I agree with
I
it.
think that's the right mindset you need to go to when you are,
Right.
like, presenting your project. Be very sure of what
Mhm.
and taking, like, in a joyful, like,
Yeah,
playful
exactly. Be
way.
open minded, and
Exactly.
chances are we're students. We're most likely we're gonna be wrong. Sometimes we're right,
Bueno, yeah.
but we have to be open minded.
What I see in the presentations is that what I didn't like
Mm.
is that sometimes professor will have different point of view, and it's very, like, objective or subjective to the person who is giving
Right. Yeah. Of
the
course. Of
review.
course.
Like, I can notice that, you can have million different opinions on the same project. Who's right? Who's wrong? You don't know.
Right.
So you only have to take the best advice from each professor, and take it to the next, and improve your next
Right.
projects based
Exactly.
on those.
Exactly. Yeah. I think you said
So,
it good there, and um, yeah, I think it's subjective. In the end, the architecture is
like
considered
art.
it's an art. So
Yeah.
there are some things that are not objective. They are not subjective. If you do it this way, it doesn't work, and it doesn't
Exactly.
work.
Yeah.
But instead of them saying, "Well, this one doesn't work," and that's it,
Yeah. Why?
instead tell me how do I fix it. Okay, you say it
Exactly.
doesn't work, but how do I fix it? And a lot of people don't take that view. They say, "Well, it doesn't work, and that's it." But I
Hmm.
think we should talk about, okay, how do I make it work? Do you know? If you don't know, that's fine. You don't know, oh, that's okay. But don't just push people down and say students,
Yeah.
especially students. You don't know who you're talking to. Frank Gehry, for example, when he was in school, his professor told him to quit architecture because it
Yeah.
wasn't something for him. And imagine if he had listened, where
No,
would we be?
we have
So
frankery.
exactly. So we have to be a little careful when we talk to students, especially. And I see it with my sister because my sister is younger than me and she's starting to go to college now. And when I speak to her, I try to encourage her, but at the same time, try to be a little bit realistic about what
Hmm.
she's saying because she may have these expectations that I'm gonna do this and travel the world while working online, and say, well, okay, you can do it. But I try to give her the realistic view while also not trying to
Yeah.
push her
Destroy.
down,
Yeah.
destroy her
Pushing.
dream,
Yeah.
because why not? She can do it, but she has to be smart about it.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
Right.
It's a different. Yeah. Well, no. How old is she?
She's 18. She's gonna turn
18.
18 now.
18.
Yeah.
Yeah. What,
It's a difficult age.
yeah, it's a difficult age. I know, and she grew up with, you know,
A lot of
a
changes
lot of
and
changes and a
yeah.
lot of, like, information on social media.
Yeah. It
It's,
was
it's a different
difficult.
it's a different type of thinking too.
Yeah. It's very
As
difficult for them. I'm glad that when I grew up, I didn't have.
phones
I
or
didn't have a phone. I
anything.
didn't have internet. I had one computer at home,
Wow.
which didn't even work with internet half the time.
I think we're the last generation
Right.
that knew what, that
What it
life
was
was
before. Right.
before having all those
Yeah,
sort
and it
of
was
things.
fun, but there were some things that were not fun. For
Like
example,
what?
for example, well, I guess they were fun, but for example, I was talking with somebody the other day. When we didn't have the phone, you could say whatever you wanted, and nobody could prove you wrong. You can say, "Well, milk doesn't come from cows; it comes from parrots or something," and there was no way that I could prove you wrong. Whereas now, I just open the Google, I just search it, and
Exactly.
that's it.
Yeah.
But it kills the conversation. Whereas back then, it was like, no, you would have real
You will have a more,
conversations.
like a in-depth conversation,
Right.
and you will socialize more with
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And
Of
that's
course.
what I also, like, try to do nowadays, is just, like, go to events where I can be surrounded by people, like meet new people.
Yeah.
And yeah, that keeps also that sense of humanity,
Mm-hmm.
of human
Mm-hmm.
interaction.
Yeah, and that's why I think what you're doing
Yeah, it's
here is great
great.
because
Yes.
we're just talking, and But
Thanks, thanks to Architectural Authority Mass
right, yeah.
for this opportunity.
No,
Uh-huh.
it's great. I think it's a great initiative.
Yes, and I have some questions for you.
Mhm.
Quick questions.
Quick questions.
Good questions.
Okay.
To know better
Mhm.
about you. So, what's your favorite time of the day to be creative?
Early. Sorry, not early. The opposite of early. Late.
The opposite.
Late at
Late.
night. Yeah.
Why with like designers and architects and
I don't
artists
know.
like like owls? We're like
Yeah.
nocturnal.
I don't know. The Beatles too did it too. They used to work. They started working at 12 at night and they finished working at 6. They couldn't work before that.
You really like the Beatles.
Nah, I love them. Great.
You're like following
Following their
his
footsteps.
lifestyle.
But I don't work that late. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bueno, I think the latest I have gone to while school,
Yeah.
it was like 5 p.m.
Yeah.
It was during the pandemic. I had my bed next to the
Right. So
computer.
yeah. But late at night is the most
I think
creative.
so. Is that you're the quietest time
Yeah.
you can create. So, what's a song that's always on your playlist?
Oof, I didn't know. I would have prepared if I knew this question. I like. There's a song by the Beatles called "Happiness Is a Warm Gun."
Mm,
Beautiful song.
okay.
I would choose that.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Biggest influence in architecture?
I would say Morphosis.
Morphosis.
Yeah.
What Morphosis? What about Morphosis?
No, they're incredible. I love the sculptural way of looking at architecture.
What's your
The favorite building? I would say Cooper Union in New York. That one is beautiful.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah. The Dallas Museum is beautiful too. You've been in New York?
I have never been. Oh my gosh.
No?
Oh my gosh, 10 years here. And I haven't
No.
been.
No, but that one is my favorite.
Okay.
Morphosis. Yeah.
One project you dream of working someday?
I always love to do like a stadium.
A stadium.
Yeah.
Nice.
Or stadium and museum. I always love to do those.
Where would they be?
Anywhere.
Anywhere. Albania.
No. I would like more in the US
In
to,
the US.
to do it. Yeah.
Nice. And a stadium of what? What sport?
Like soccer.
Soccer.
Football.
Okay, nice. And a museum. That's nice. If I have to design something with a
Right.
museum, like
I think museum is one of the best things you can design.
Yes. I'd be so gratified to design something that engages the public. My last design, my master's thesis at FIU, it was how to connect. It was in Chicago. We had to go to Chicago. It was one of the best experiences I had. And we have to redesign the back of the MCA museum and how to connect the back to the river.
Really?
I really enjoyed working on that project because we had to create spaces for the artists to paint, to live, and how to bring the, like the pedestrians, the people.
Right.
I did something very, like organic vernissaje thing.
Right. Yeah, but museum I think gives you a lot of freedom and you're giving space to the public too. It's one of the best things for me to design. I love it.
Next question: If buildings had emotions, what emotion would you design for?
I was thinking about this the other day. I like architects who design. They give you a feeling when you look at a building. You look at a building and immediately you feel angry. You say, "Oh, this is terrible," or you say, "Oh, this is beautiful." To me, it doesn't matter. It can be both, but as long as it's not. Well, I don't know what to think about it. The moment where you look at it and you don't remember it a moment later, like 1 second later, to me, it's not successful. It can be that I hate it. That's fine with me. You look at Frank Gehry buildings and I show it to some of my coworkers and they say, "I hate it. This is not architecture." And I love that reaction. Even though it's negative, I love it because at least the building is kind of provoking something.
Provoking something on you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if I had to choose, I would choose that.
Angry?
Yeah, angry, yeah. Angry and, maybe crying better. If I make them cry with the building, it's success.
Anger and crying.
Anger and crying.
That's a great combination.
Yeah.
Okay. And well, this one I think I asked you kind of early, but Describe Escape Studio's mission in one sentence.
Well, the thing.
Oh well, describe, like how do you see your, like your vision, your
Well,
project, what you want to do, the
I,
impact that you want to create.
I would say my personal philosophy or
Mhm.
idea of what architecture is to me is the one that I mentioned earlier. That it's like a tool for me to express myself, and there's one thing that I always want to do is to question and to
Mm.
not take anything for granted. And to me, that's my main motivation of what I want to do. And that is good for me because it gives me the flexibility to design whatever I want. I'm not, boxed into this particular style or
Mm.
anything because my idea is just to question
Mm.
anything. And if what I'm doing right now doesn't work, I can easily move to another thing, and it
Yeah, doesn't really
doesn't
matter
really
at the
matter
end.
because yeah, that's what the Beatles did too. To go back to the Beatles, they started with songs like "She Loves You" and "I Want to Hold Your Hand," very silly, very easy songs to play, but very catchy melodies. And then they moved on to they did, for example, one song it's called "Revolution 9," where they just
Yeah,
recorded like 200 sound bites of them screaming and I don't know saying random words, and then they put them all, they laid them on the table, and then they just started like putting them like this, putting them one on top of another, and the entire is like a 9-minute song of them just speaking.
just to speak.
But it was revolutionary because nobody had done that
Nice.
before, and nobody had played with recording that way. And but they moved in a span of like 2-3 years. They weren't confronted to any particular style of because they just said,
Yeah, you were
let's
very
question.
open in
Right.
questioning and exploring. And I think, like as an architect, like to keep yourself also very creative
Right.
in your daily life at work. I think you need to have that
Yeah.
eye for curiosity, for you know seeing things and how can I make this better.
Right, exactly.
That's nice.
That's my idea of it. I don't have any particular style that I like, even though I'm a little bit opinionated in the one that we mentioned, morphosis and things like that. But I can appreciate Le Corbusier and um, Louis Kahn and anybody. I can appreciate anybody because to me, there's not one way to do it.
Mm,
There are many ways to do it, but as long as you question things and as long
things.
as you stay creative and not be confronted to one particular
To
style.
one particular style.
Yeah, because I don't like not just when architects, but you have favorite musicians and you have favorite actors and they keep doing the same movies or they keep doing the same songs, and after 5 albums you already had enough and you know what it's going to be, and that's not good for anybody. Well, maybe it's good for them because they sell the albums and make money, but they would sell more albums if they kept doing something different.
Different, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So, thank you very much,
Thank
Shend,
you.
for being here. It was really fun and really good to talk with you and share your experience with all the people that are watching us. And thank you for the Architectural Authority magazine for this opportunity um, to bring creative and talented students here to the podcast. See you in the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Framing the Future podcast. Your 5-star reviews really help us continue what we do. Please rate your listening experience, and let's keep building this beautiful community together. For exclusive access to more design content, visit thearchitecturalauthority.com or download our app from the App Store or Google Play. Until next time, stay creative.